I often ask myself, so what is the role of the measured entity versus the role of the market? And by the market, I mean ourselves as ESD practitioners, and in your case, being
Like you said, you're starting things, and having that long-term view. They did things quickly towards the end of their own financial year.
playing more of a role in educating the measured entities, and these are specifically mid-sized companies, and in what manner? And what is the obligation of the small business? Should the small business understand how to position themselves to a mid-sized company for ESD purposes? Hello and welcome to Shared Impact. My name is Mbudbi. Today I will be speaking to Muriel from Econo Services. So the conversation that we'll be having is really around the problem statement of what solutions should we as ESD ecosystem players be taking to the market for mid-sized companies that are looking for high impact ESD solutions, but on a low budget? Hello, Muriel.
Hi,
How are you doing?
good. How are you?
Thank you so much for joining me for this Fireside chat. I am very excited for us to be talking about the kind of solutions that we wish we were seeing in the market for mid-sized companies, the kind of solutions that we are seeing in the market, and hopefully from your experience, what you would like to see more. From our perspective, as you know, we are in the enterprise and supplier development implementation space, but we work largely with blue chip companies, and we've picked up that none of the players, certainly that we have been exposed to, are really targeting mid-sized companies. And as a result, what you see as the options that are available to these companies, I think often leaves much to be desired. So do you want to speak to your experience a little bit?
Yes, so I've been in BEE for probably 3 years. And what I've seen in the industry is either you have a situation where those medium-sized companies are ticking off the box. We're close to our year end. We need to find someone, enterprise, supplier, beneficiaries. Tell us who to pay. We'll just sign the check.
Yes.
And over the time, they realize that the value that they want to put into the market is not what they're getting back.
Yes.
And so you want them to transition from it being just a tick box exercise and say, okay, what real influence can we make? What difference, real difference? Because when you think about what BE is trying to do, BE is not about just giving people money.
Yes.
It's about changing the economy and giving more people access to the economy. It's about skills development. It's about creating jobs. And if you're not doing that as an incubator, as a measured entity who's doing BE, then you really have to ask yourself, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Are we just doing it to get a certificate? Do we want to be writing checks forever and monitoring our net pack to make sure we don't miss the mark?
Yeah.
Or what kind of value do we want to add?
I often ask myself, so what is the role of the measured entity versus the role of the market? And by the market, I mean ourselves as ESD practitioners, and in your case, BE consultants, and the role of the SMEs that are the end beneficiaries. So is it reasonable for us to expect that a mid-sized company would have enough knowledge around ESD to make an informed decision? Should we as ESD implementation partners be playing more of a role in educating the measured entities, and these are specifically mid-sized companies, and in what manner? And what is the obligation of the small business? Should the small business understand how to position themselves to a mid-sized company for ESD purposes? I'll be curious to get your view on that.
So I think our role as the consultants, as the advisors of businesses, we are supposed to be the middleman. You're supposed to foster the relationship between the measured entity and those small, whether it's EME or a QSE that's looking to get into the market, that's in most instances trying to get into the market so that they have a relationship with those much bigger, more established companies. Now, if there's, in most instances, they're not going to have an opportunity to meet. So because you're the middleman, you're fostering to say, okay, you as the measured entity, what are your needs? What are you actually trying to achieve through your enterprise development? What do you want 3 years from now? What do you want 5 years from now? in terms of how that. And then once you know what the measured entity is trying to achieve, then you're looking at your pool of the enterprise development beneficiaries and trying to link that to those sector-specific needs, because sometimes it does become that nuanced.
Yes.
And then also changing the product in such a way that it suits the needs of the measured entity. If we have a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, what ends up happening is we are losing the value of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But if we're able to create products that are specific to what the measured entity is trying to achieve, but also what those small emerging companies are trying to do,
Yeah.
then you are meeting both of their needs,
Yeah.
and not just a one-sided affair.
You said two things to me that I actually want to go back to and kind of pick on a little bit. So because we work with blue chip companies, we find that a lot of our clients do have an enterprise and supplier development strategy. But I think mid-sized companies, I mean, we're talking companies that make typically between 50 and 250 million rand turnover. So if you now just cascade that down to their target, we're talking a target of, give or take 1 million rand. This is not a company that, in my opinion, should be put under pressure to have an ESD strategy. And so it's almost a case of, so what would happen with that entity, right? And I think this is the change of approach that we're saying we need to see in the market. And I suppose that's why ourselves, as an example, have developed a solution that we think is more appropriate for a mid-sized company than our typical blue chip, because we have to work on the assumption that that company doesn't have an ESD strategy.
Mm.
They can have socioeconomic development objectives and or values that they would like to align themselves with. But in essence, we should give them a quote-unquote off-the-shelf, easy-to-buy solution that still subscribes to their fundamental beliefs, right? And then we would plug in the appropriate SMEs to then help them realize that objective. Versus a much bigger company, we must of course start with a strategy, and because they've got a sizable budget and you want to make sure that you're directing that according to your strategic imperatives that are unique to you.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that it would be a good almost copy and paste an approach with the mid-sized companies.
Yeah.
What do you see as kind of the values that these mid-sized companies are looking to align themselves with, even when it comes to ESD?
So I think a lot of times it's about, can I find a beneficiary who I can look at to put on my supply chain, just as an example, or who can help me see the real change, for example, job creation. Like going in, there's an understanding that, there are going to be deliverables in a sense. But I think the ones that I've seen the most is we never find beneficiaries we can put out on supply chain. Where can we find people with this particular product that we can then make them an enterprise beneficiary and have that graduation point as a supplier? And I like what you said about having a platform where you are able to make those informed decisions, but in a way that's not complicated or trying to figure out, or you have instances and trying desperately not to name names, in the sense of you will have to go through certain hoops as a measured entity. No, you have to do this program and that program, and then only we can give you this particular benefit, which for some medium-sized companies, that's not what they need. That's not what they want. And sometimes even the people that they want to put on the program might look at that and say, no, that's actually not what we're looking for. We don't want to pass all these hoops before we actually get to see some benefit for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so you want, like you're saying, an easy, accessible platform that allows for those sized companies who don't have a strategy and don't need one, but who can make an informed decision that is aligned to the event.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we had in mind, right? Because our view has become, we've got a really rich database of small businesses, either that we've worked with before or that were interested in participating in one of our programs, but you can't take everybody onto a program. But then it's almost like you've got this pool of a captive audience that we really want to match to the market. And it might not be the market that they had initially were looking to target when they responded to the opportunity. But just because you didn't end up on a program with one of our blue chip companies, it doesn't mean that you couldn't get the same benefit from a mid-sized company. without necessarily putting the pressure on the mid-sized company to, as you're saying, go find the right SME. Rather say to them, we now have this avenue where you can shop, if you will, for the right SME. And we already know their development needs and will match your money to that development need. And that way, you actually realize both your enterprise points, enterprise development points, and hopefully, if we do our work right, you get the supplier conversion. And it can all happen in the same place. And I suppose it's still the ease and the convenience that they're looking for, but without the risk that they find themselves being exposed to oftentimes. So how are these mid-sized companies actually finding these small businesses?
So I've seen in the market, they do struggle. Either they're going to ask their consultant to find someone through their own database, or they will find an incubation who they will then say, okay, can you assist us? But then they look sometimes at the programs that are there. There's a bit of a misalignment, and before you know it, the entire project itself is at risk, and other times you will find that the attempts by the measured entity to actually do the B1 become frustrated because of how hard it is to find appropriate. And then that's not what we're trying to create. That's not the environment we want. We want BE to work, to make business sense. And if we're going to make business sense, then we need to create platforms that allow that.
Yes. In your portfolio of your clients, do you have like one story that stands out? And again, this is the mid-sized companies that you think, oh my gosh, for a company with this 100,000 Rand, 200,000 Rand budget, what they did was really clever. And then conversely, do you have one where you cringe and you go, why would you do that with your money?
So I have had medium-sized businesses who have gone and really made an effort to get to know their beneficiary. And it was actually over a year.
Wow.
So they sought out people within their organization who would be willing to basically mentor this particular beneficiary over a year. They mentored them, they looked at their business plan, they looked at their financial projections, they looked at the services that they would be able to provide them should that be an opportunity that they could be given. And then it was around mid-year, August, June, July, they then said, okay, we are going to give you money, seeing the needs that you have. We'll check in on you in September, see how you've done. I gave them the money, they checked in, what the deliverables had been achieved, and they were able to put them on basic coaching.
Nice.
And this is a small family-run business.
Yeah.
Husband, wife, team.
Yeah.
And it's really meant and done a lot for them. But I think for the measured entity, it's become a meaningful story to tell, of course, because they didn't, sometimes I think they do feel like they're shooting in the dark.
Yes.
And hoping for the best.
Yes.
Whereas in this situation, it actually did.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out.
The key thing that I'm hearing in what you're saying there, and this is not commonplace, is two business owners took the time out to actually take a long-term strategic view on how it is that they want to show up in terms of enterprise development. And they were quite deliberate about what that plan is. And it was executed over a time horizon that makes sense. That's really like a poster child of how it should happen, right?
Yes.
But we know it doesn't. That's not necessarily how it plays out in the market. So let's segue then into when has the opposite been true?
So I've had one client who was extremely eager in the beginning to really go out and find. And what ended up happening was a misalignment. And this misalignment was from both sides. So the beneficiary had a specific expectation, the measured entity had a specific expectation. And like you said, you're starting things, and having that long-term view. They did things quickly towards the end of their own financial period. So now they're under the pressure. So you're under pressure of, okay, we need to do this now. The manager's like, yeah, but I really don't think this is going to work for me. And the manager, and it's like, no, but we have this particular deadline. And so what ended up happening is that the entire program ended up not happening.
And so the measured entity doesn't get their points, and the SME doesn't get the benefits
because of that misalignment.
That's a big risk.
A very
because I mean the consequences of not getting your enterprise and supply development points. We know that not only do you not get the points at that scorecard level, but you also then put your entire scorecard at risk
because it's a priority element. If you don't meet that priority element, you are discounted.
Yes, one level.
And we deal with companies who have to be a specific level.
Yeah,
they want to work with banks. If they want to work with mines. If they have to be a specific level. And so whatever strategy you give, you need to make sure that you meet that particular.
Yeah.
So what was interesting to see was that became a lesson,
of course,
for that.
And how did they turn that around? Obviously, in the following financial.
So in the following financial year, we had a strat meeting right at the beginning to say, let's not do things towards the end. You've seen how doing things towards the end, creates problems. But let's find you a platform that allows you to make an informed decision, know what the deliverables are right at the beginning.
Yeah. So, I just want to walk you through the use case of shared impact, because I think it fits in very well in what we're talking about now, which is almost one is the before and the after. So you used to do it that way. Maybe there's a different way for you to look at the same problem that obviously de-risks kind of what you're exposed to the last time. And then there's the really great example of a medium-sized company that was deliberate in this. So for us, what shared impact really is as a use case is I would like to be able to tap into a database of credible vetted small businesses. Within that database, though, I would like to specify my profile of SME that I want to engage with in a manner that makes sense to me. So we allow the flexibility for you to define it. I would like them in this geography, in this industry, this size, in whatever makes sense for you, right? And then you are at liberty to say to us, and this is my budget. So you can say, this is my budget, but you can also say, and this is the kind of support that I would like to align myself with.
Okay.
But of course, we give you the options of the types of support that are available to you. So, at the office, I always say to them, so we actually take a lot of SME capacity. So you can come in and you think, I'm in Joburg, I'm looking for an SME in Rivonia that's 100% Black woman owned, is an EME, is in the flower business, and I have a 20,000 Rand budget. And we can turn around and say, we've got one that matches your search filter, and that 20,000 Rand that you have as a budget is going to be utilized for the following interventions that are informed by the diagnostic assessment that we've done for this SME.
Yeah.
So in providing the platform to those clients with whom you're almost strategizing for the year with, for me, I feel like a solution like this not only will provide you with exactly what you're looking for, but the big thing that I think is missing is the credible vetted SME.
Yes.
And this gives you a very rich database from where to choose the one that you think fits your requirements the most.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's, again, another risk. So you have instances where people don't understand how strict the rules are with regards to the fact that what percentage of Black ownership must the enterprise have in order to be an ED beneficiary, and it's 100 to 51% Black owned. The fact that it has to be a QSC or an EME.
Yeah.
Because if you make that payment to someone who doesn't
reverse it,
you can't reverse it, and the points are gone.
Yes.
But if you know this is a vetted entity, I can trust that it's been vetted to the point of are they actually a registered business?
Yes.
You know what their needs are right up front.
Yeah.
So if it's not aligned to you, you get to choose something else.
Correct.
And you are able to then say, okay, I'm making meaningful impact because I actually see what this person is going to end up doing with that.
Yes. You just raised a point that is such an important one for us because in addition to, it's almost like what's the definition of a qualifying beneficiary? Then you overlay that with what industry are you as a measured entity in, because certain industries are more prescriptive, certain sectors are more prescriptive than others. And that's part of what we're actually looking to solve, to say, when you create a profile on the platform as a measured entity, tell us the sector that you're in. And then we'll be able to say, okay, you're generic and therefore it's fairly flexible, or you're in transport and this is what's unique to you, or you're in ICT and this is what's applicable. And we find that mid-sized companies also don't necessarily, and I mean, to their defense, they don't need to understand the codes to that extent.
No.
But you will meet like an SME who you think is highly capable and you're so excited to work with this guy. But actually, he's not a qualifying beneficiary. And you've now, as you say, spend the money and you actually can't course correct that. And we've added that layer to try and mitigate that risk for these companies as well.
That's a great idea. And I think when, like you're saying, besides the medium businesses not having to know, sometimes they don't have the money to now be, upskilling their staff who have to do their job.
Correct.
To now learn the code.
Correct.
And that's where we come in as the middleman, saying, okay, we can actually assist you doing this and help you do it properly, so that when you go to audit, that's really the test to say, okay, where's my pack? Is everything okay in this pack, and is it going to be accepted by them?
Oh gosh, you just brought another point that, again, leads me to one of the functionalities that we've added. So we find, depending on when you executed your enterprise development initiative, the verification agency walks in, let's call it 3 months after year end, but you did this around 6 months ago. You since have a very difficult time finding the end beneficiary. You don't remember who collated the documents or where they put them. And now again, you've spent the money, but you can't put together the supporting document to substantiate your claim. And we've made sure that we have the ability to upload the document onto the platform. So if you log in 6 months later, you'll obviously securely access those documents. So you don't have to think about that, over the 6 month period. And okay, I did this for this guy. This is where I've saved the documents. And when the verification agency comes in, and we know the verification process is quite unnerving. So the last thing you want to learn at that time is, I actually don't know what we've done with these documents, and I have no way of contacting you.
Or they're in the wrong format. Right?
Yes.
Or they're in the wrong format. Oh, sorry, you need to get the person to sign this again. Or you didn't get that properly done in terms of an affidavit and what we accept. But if you know that, okay, this has been vetted because every document in this portal is the correct format, then you have that peace of mind going into an audit.
Yeah. So tell me this, when you work with the measured entities that you guys engage with from a consulting perspective, who is the typical role player? Because for us, we find it's oftentimes the HR manager or the finance manager. And so the first question is, who's the typical role player? And do you find that their objectives are nuanced? So, and I ask this deliberately because a finance person is probably very numbers driven, and then HR, you assume, are more people and therefore softer. But do you find that the conversation then differs between the finance person and the HR, and if so, in what manner?
Okay, so it really depends on the company, but we usually do find it's either an HR person or it's someone who is in finance. And yes, the finance people are very number oriented. They worry more about the net pat than the issue of, okay, how can we assist this particular enterprise development? And from a human resources perspective, for them it's more about relationships. We want to build a relationship with a particular entity, ensure that it's long-term and not a once-off, and also have impact in exactly what we end up doing in those particular activities. But I think whether it's a finance person or an HR person, by having that particular platform in order for them to make an informed decision, regardless of whether their drive is, okay, the NetPad or building relationships, it can still fulfill the needs that they have.
So regardless of the values or the angle, the need is the same. So, one of the things that excites us the most for us is, with the work that we do now, it's less about what did you do and more about what impact did what you did have on the end beneficiary. And you alluded to this earlier, and I just want to kind of latch on to that it's interesting for me that even though mid-sized companies haven't quite found the perfect sweet spot in terms of the solution that is appropriate for their ED, they are saying that. They're saying, but what is the return, and not financial return, but am I really having an impact? Where did this guy end up? What value did I add? Did he grow? Is he sustained? But again, the budget is not big enough for them to try and navigate this by themselves. So for us, one of the things that excites us is suddenly we have like an aggregation mechanism where we can aggregate multiple smaller budgets and really still have the same impact. So one of our goals is to annually write a shared impact report. That we will actually share with these smaller entities that have contributed, for them to actually see what collective impact we all had with what is normally like a very modest budget that you think, I'm not going to go very far. Of course, as an individual, if you look at yourself as one company, your small budget's probably not going to go very far. But as a collective, it'll take us that much further. And you still get to have the story about, how you contributed to that collective impact that we've achieved.
And I think a lot of times people want to know what happened. They don't want to just, write up a check and hope for the best as it goes into this big pool. And I think that's a great idea, that they get to see the impact, and that allows them to then want to say, we want to do it again.
Of course. Because I feel shareholders and board members, actually, for them, it's the only way you're going to stop making this a grudge buy is if you show them the value that it is having. And the best way to do that is, again, the onus for me is on us as the ecosystem players to make sure that we're putting the right information in front of the right stakeholder. Because otherwise you're burdening them with stop doing your daily job, or the offering for which your company exists, and actually start doing effectively my job, right? Whereas our role is to empower them enough for them to make an informed decision, and then ideally then come back and showcase the impact that the contribution that that read has had.
I think one of the meaningful moments that I've seen is where a company has actually, they themselves have made the effort to have, feedback testimonials from the company that they have helped. So this first story I told you about of that, they were able to have a testimonial from that beneficiary to say, this has been a really meaningful journey. You took me from beginning of the year, worked through me right through until now I'm a supplier and able to grow my business because you took the time to get to know what it was.
That's interesting, because that angle, if we added to like the storytelling, it's effectively marketing for the small businesses, right? So it actually goes beyond just developing them and start to almost subliminally give them access to markets, because we can still tell those stories at showcase level, even if it's on the platform itself, where the following year other companies come in to use the service, and their testimonials on the successes that other SMEs see. That's interesting. So I think we should actually be more deliberate then about, yes, we're giving a solution on how do you secure your points by matching you with the SME that speaks to your very specific need. But we could also actually potentially go beyond that to showcase the stories, not only through the report, but through the, if you will, testimonials that other clients can then use those SMEs as service providers as well, which speaks to the sustainability.
Because you see real people, you see their business, whether it's a truck behind them. I was able to be able to afford this truck now, and we're growing the business. And that's a meaningful impact and story that you're able to then share.
So if I can put you on the spot, what is the one thing that you would say mid-sized companies shouldn't do? And what is the one thing that you would say they should definitely do when it comes to making sure that obviously they secure their points, but also in a meaningful manner?
So I think one thing that I would encourage them to do is to, at the start of their financial year, sit down and think about, what are we trying to achieve? And does it make sense for us to wait don't wait until the last minute, basically, but be able to find someone you can partner with who's able to help you make an informed decision, and look at the risks of trying to do it on your own. Look at the risks of going out and basically shooting in the dark, trying to find an ED beneficiary. And when we start doing that, then we are moving towards more meaningful BE and achieving what BE is really trying to do. And sorry, I think I forgot your last.
So that's what you've kind of answered both, right? So don't leave it to the last minute. Don't try and do it on your own. Rather go and find an appropriate partner that can help you navigate this journey. And I think if I can just add a closing remark just to end that part is, for us, it's almost, ideally you want to plan ahead, right? But we find that entrepreneurs are so busy in their business that because this is not core to their business, they don't. And I think what we're saying is it's finding the balance between that and yes, you're now in the last quarter of the year and it's panic mechanic and you're just trying to secure your points.
Yeah.
Equally, we have an obligation, and I suppose this is why solutions like SharedImpact exist, to say, don't worry. Just because it's lastminute.com, it doesn't necessarily mean that the impact here has to be eroded. Yeah, this is the channel that we're providing to you, where you can do this online. You can do it from the convenience of your timelines within your budget, but still have the same level of impact and secure the points before the financial year end without taking the risk of trying to do that on your own. So hopefully between the advice and the pointers that you've given and the solution that we've introduced to the market, we can start to see ourselves having a sizable impact when it comes to the contribution that mid-sized companies are having in the market. They are the biggest representation of businesses in the country. For me, it's kind of wild that we as ecosystem players haven't brought a compelling solution to the market. And I'm excited about the impact that this can have. So thank you for your time. Thank you for having important work that you guys continue to do. And I hope that you and I will check in a year from now and showcase the successes that we've actually had over that period.
Great. Thank you.
Vera.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. For more information on the solution SharedImpact, please visit our website, ziwoegp.com/SharedImpact. You can also have a look on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages.